Grace and peace to you this day, on this Trinity Sunday in which we celebrate. You know, I am a millennial. You know, that phrase, that word comes with a lot of baggage, right? Preconceived notions or ideas of what my experience may have been like and is like in this world. But one thing, right, there's lots of jokes that we make about different generations, and one thing people talk about a lot with my generation is this thing, right, this participation trophies, right? These trophies that we received for participating in sports and activities. See, as a kid, I played a lot of sports. Wasn't very athletic. Wasn't very great at any sport. Like baseball and soccer and basketball and football. I didn't receive many trophies, though. I think I got a few most improved awards, perhaps. But I wasn't getting to the top trophies, right? The best players, the MVPs. But I did receive my share of participation trophies. Right, these trophies, we just have the year on it, the team in which I played. I didn't think they were super special. Right, if I was to look for my trophies, I'm sure they're somewhere in a box at my parents' house. I wouldn't look through them with pride, and I wouldn't think I'm extra special because of the number of trophies I received. But I think as I picked each of those trophies up, I think I would remember. See, for me, those trophies, right, those participation trophies are reminders, right? They're symbols of that experience that I had, right? The games in which I played that season. The players that I played with, right? Those relationships that I made. See, it's a symbol of that experience. It's a reminder that I was something, right? I was in something. I was a part of something bigger than just me, right? I was a part of a team. So you may be asking yourself right now, why is he talking about participation trophies on Trinity Sunday? See, Trinity Sunday is a weird celebration each year, right? It happens the Sunday after Pentecost. Because the Trinity is weird and we don't understand it. Right? We have all these notions that if we talk about the Trinity, then we've committed heresy because we can't understand it. And that's true to an extent. But I think we do understand some things about God and who God is as this unique 1 in 3, 3 in 1 situation. But I mean, you're right? Like, the best answer for what the Trinity is, right, is a mystery, right? It's something that can't be fully explained. But I think there's something to be said, right? See, my favorite image of the Trinity, right, is from this icon, right? And it's an icon written by Andrei Rublev, right? It's a picture depicting a table. And there's 3 persons at that table. I see this is originally supposed to depict this story from Genesis when 3 divine messengers visited Abraham. But it's gone on to be interpreted through the centuries, right? This is a very old icon, and it's been interpreted as the Trinity, right? It's even called Trinity, right? Rublev's Trinity. And I love this image, right? Because this image of a table, right? This fellowship that these 3 persons of the Trinity, that they experience together and with one another. And obviously this doesn't work completely for the Trinity because it does depict 3 separate persons. But I think there's something we can learn from this image of 3 persons at a table. And when I learned about this icon in seminary, what I loved about it so much was at the forefront of the table, right? From our perspective, looking at this icon, there appears to be room for one more. See, I like this image because it talks about, right, it shows us the inviting presence of God, right, the inviting presence of the Trinity, and how our place as God's people, right, our place as a person, a child of God, is to join that table. It's to sit at that table, right? It's to participate in that fellowship. See, that's where that participation metaphor comes back. See, for me, this idea of the Trinity as relationship is important because we are connected to the Trinity through relationship, right? How often have we heard recently about these verses, right? Like from the book of John, right? John's gospel, about how I and the Father are one and you and I are one, and so we're all connected together, and all these different verses that remind us that we have relationship with God through the Son, right? Through the person of Jesus, we are connected to God and who God is. So when we think of Trinity, we think of salvation, and salvation, therefore, is less of a place we go when we die, a place that's apart from here, this heaven, right, that seems to be so distant and separate from our current reality. See, instead, salvation then, right, becomes participation. It becomes participation in what God is doing. See, we see some of this in our readings this week. Right, see, our first reading is that beautiful story of creation that we love so much from Genesis 1. How God spends all this time creating this beautiful, beautiful work of art that we call creation, and it was good, God says. And then God creates humans. God creates humanity, and God gives them dominion over the work of God's hands. See, that word dominion is a God word. It's an authority, right? And it's to be authority, right? It's authority that we share with God over creation, right? We are to be stewards like God is a steward of God's creation. We're to participate in that stewardship of creation, in that creation work. Even Psalm 8 kind of carries this forward, right? We have this beautiful psalm that I love, and it's about how majestic is God's name, and the stars and the heavens, and how big everything is, and what then of human beings? That you be mindful of them, right? What about mortals? You've placed them just a little lower than God. You've given them dominion. It acknowledges that we have this special place in God's relationships. In this relationship that God has with creation, we sit somehow at that table with God. We've got our second reading, right? And Paul writes about the Trinity and peace and living together, and I think that's something we gain and we learn from how God participates and how God relates with God's own self. It's peace and unity. But I really like our gospel reading, right? Maybe because it's so familiar to us, right? But it's that blessing that we call the Great Commission, right? It's Jesus sending the disciples out in Matthew before he ascends, back to be in that relationship fully himself, right? To go, right? Make disciples of all nations, to baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That beautiful Trinitarian language. To teach them what Jesus has commanded, and to remember that Jesus is with us always till the end of the age. See this image of relationship, right? We are with Jesus, and Jesus is with us. But also, it's once again a reminder that God's work, therefore, is our work. That work that God began in creation, that we read about through the whole of the Old Testament. That work that was continued in the person of Jesus. That work is now our work to do, right? We get to participate in that work of the kingdom. So then maybe you ask yourself, right, where is my participation trophy then? What do I get? What do I receive for being a part of God's kingdom, for participating in God's life and God's love? Well, I think the work itself is a trophy of sorts. See, contrary, I think, to our understanding, right, that maybe that trite statement of a crown, right, and how we receive jewels in our crown for the beautiful and wonderful things we do for God. See, there's not an individual trophy case. This work that we do as God's people is not an individual sport. We're on the same team and we participate, and just as I think those participation trophies that I have somewhere in a closet at my parents', those trophies are a reminder of experiences. They're a reminder of the times in which I was a part of something bigger than myself. We have those trophies. You have those trophies already. You have those memories, those experiences, right? Where God's self, God's experience, God's love, God's relationships, right? Where they've broken into your lives. Those moments where you've experienced the presence of God. Perhaps it's an impactful worship experience, or a time you were serving your neighbor. Perhaps it's a particular relationship you have because of this work of God. Those are our participation trophies, for lack of a better term. Those are our reminders that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. So when we get disheartened, right, it's easy to do that in this world where sin and despair seem to be so prevalent. We can remember, right, we can look at that trophy case of those memories, those experiences, and we can be recharged and sent back out by those memories of God, by those memories of our experiences with God and with one another, so that we can be a part of that work, right? So we can fight for justice. We can stick up for those who have no voice. We can reject sin in all the forms it takes, like prejudice and racism and sexism and all these different things that separate us and destroy this kingdom and creation that God has made. We get to be a part of that relationship building, right? We get to be inviters. Just as God has invited us to God's table to participate in the fellowship of the divine, we then get to invite others to participate with God as well, to sit at that table, to be welcomed and encouraged, and then sent out to be agents of God's love and God's own being, so we can be like God to the world. Amen.